After pondering whether or not we are making the most healthy of decisions after a Taco Bell date, we decided to hit the grocery store. I picked up a bunch of 99-cent cranberries and then decided to pair these, of course, with some ginger root. But I really don't need a big ginger root, and oh my goodness, these are some big roots that they have in store today. So we went ahead and broke off a appropriate size piece, got a good little weight on it, and then carried on to the next item, which I let Violet do the selecting of. And believe it or not, she was drawn right to the lemons, which is always a good choice because we need those for preserving and lengthening the life of our kitchen crafting. So after finding this lemon, we looked for one more ingredient to add. So with there being a really good sale on these oranges, I figured we would grab 3 of these. And then it's time to get it all home and start making something. We're actually going to make 2 somethings with these things today, and I'll show you the first one right now. Since I was beyond inspired by the price of these cranberries being the end of the season, I decided that we are going to make a cranberry juice beverage first. So your step 1 in this process is to prep your cranberries and then rinse your cranberries, all while going through and picking out only the best of the cranberries. So you're going to go rake your hands through them a few times and look for any berries that are blackened or moldy or just not up to snuff. If you don't think they look good or you're feeling kind of iffy about them, then it's probably best to follow the rule of when in doubt, throw it out. I like to do this process in a salad spinner because I can not only use the little strainer piece to take out and rinse, but I can also use the salad spinner to make sure I spin a lot of that excess water and optional cleaning supply for vegetables off of that as well, because if you do rinse and clean your fruit and vegetables, which you probably should, this is a nice little bowl to not only soak in but spin all that excess stuff off afterwards, so everything is really prepped to perfection. Once everything is all cleaned and prepped and perfect and ready to go, it's time to move everything over to the stove. Go ahead and dump your cranberries in and take a final check for any duds and pieces you may want to remove before you go ahead and start your actual cooking of the cranberries. All the cranberries, once they're inside of your Dutch oven or pot, you're going to want to go ahead and cover with some water. You're going to want to use purified water because remember, again, this is something that you're going to be drinking just as is. So tap water, you can use it, but I like to use 3 bottles of purified water. Once you've gone ahead and added all of your water in, you can go ahead and turn your heat on. You're going to want to try to bring this up to a boil first and then reduce the heat and let it simmer for about 20 minutes. So just go ahead and cover your pot up and let it do its thing. You're going to start to hear the cranberries literally popping inside of the water, which means that they're doing exactly what you need them to do to get the freshest of cranberry juice. Once the cranberries are good and popping and you know that everything is now on its way, it's time to add in some extra things for flavor. You can choose to add honey or sugar. I like using hot honey because I like to add a little bit of a spicy cayenne kick to my food, but you don't have to. You could use 1 to 2 cups of sugar. I end up actually using a blend of the 2 of them in this mixture, but you'll see a little bit more of that later on. So once your pot of cranberries starts to look like this, you can go ahead and turn your heat down and let it simmer for a little bit while you prep some other ingredients to add into it. I'm going to go ahead and start prepping my lemons so I can go ahead and throw them in once this is done with its first boil. So back on the cover goes and over to the chopping block I head. Oh, but first, if you're someone who wants to add cinnamon into your cranberries, this would actually be a pretty good time to do that. And you could choose to add either a traditional stick of cinnamon or you could just add ground cinnamon. I'm going to be adding ground cinnamon today because that's what I have left in my kitchen, so we may as well use it up. When I'm using ground cinnamon, I'm the type of person that likes to add enough spices to cover a whole top layer. But now let's get back to adding 1 lemon, and then we're also going to add to this one of the oranges that I got as well. So let's go over the chopping block. For real this time. So when I process my lemons, because I like to do things zero waste, I use these little cutting boards that I got from the dollar store that actually have a nice little drip catcher on the side so I don't lose any of the lemon juice. And actually I can take that as a lemon shot while I'm in the middle of cooking. But I cut my lemons and then slowly cut the rinds off so I can dehydrate them to use for lemon powder for baking any other recipe that I may have coming up in the future. I like to keep the slices somewhat thick, but always remove the seeds so you can try to grow them later. I think maybe that's just me, but I like to try to keep things as much zero waste as possible. Plus, having this moderate plant addiction, I may as well try to grow something for free. So let's go ahead and throw all of those in, and we're going to let them simmer as well. Go ahead and put the lid back on, and now we're going to go ahead and get back to this right over here, where now I have these seeds that I'm going to wrap up in a paper towel and try to germinate. And if they don't, well, I'll just throw them out, I guess, whatever. But let's wrap them up for a minute and see if anything happens within the next 2 days. And then we're going to put the rest of the stuff aside to throw in the dehydrator later. Before I go ahead and put this in the dehydrator though, like I was telling you just a second ago, I'm going to make sure that I drain any of the extra lemon juice off of the cutting board into this little shot glass, and I'm actually going to go ahead and knock this goodness back while I am in the process of cleaning up. And even though all this is starting to look and smell so good every time I open it up to mix it, we still need to go ahead and add that orange that we were talking about earlier. So let's not get too distracted and head back on over to the chopping block and prep that all up. So because I'm planning again to do zero waste with this and throw these orange rinds into the dehydrator as well to make a nice little orange powder, we're going to prep this nice and neatly and then go ahead and check the inside of the orange to make sure there's nothing super duper gross. And then we're going to go ahead and add them into the mix to continue boiling as our mixture continues to go ahead and cook. These things, well, the top part of the orange I'm just going to end up using as a dehydrated craft, but everything else will be turned into powder. So while everything else is simmering in a pot, we're going to take out the dehydrator and some parchment paper because I like to try to keep my dehydrator as clean as possible when working with sticky stuff like oranges and lemons can be. And I'm going to cut little pieces of paper that cover exactly how big the trays are, and then go ahead and put everything on there and start to let it dehydrate. And now I'm gonna leave some space as well for later once we're done straining the cranberries, because we're going to add that dehydrated pulp in here as well. But for now, just the oranges and lemons will do. So you're pretty much going to end up putting this on your lowest temperature setting for almost the whole day. I usually do about 8 to 10 hours and keep checking on my dehydrated goods until they feel like they are dry enough. By now, the cranberry juice is almost all done, but just make sure you go ahead and every time you mix it, start to break everything up so that way when you are using the spoon to mix things up, there's no big bulky pieces of orange and everything has just kind of become one soupy, almost seaweed looking soup type deal. It usually takes about 20 minutes to simmer, but you can do it for longer or less, or really just whatever your pot and stove allow, because different cookware and different stove tops are going to give you different creation times. And if you're someone who likes a sweeter mixture, now is a good time to add in a little more sugar as well. I'm adding about 2 cups of sugar to my mixture just to make sure that I get the correct sweetness that I am looking for. Once everything is all done and boiled and cooked and it's time to strain your juice, you are going to be like beyond ready to just taste this, because the smell is going to be overwhelming. So what I like to do is grab a little mason jar, a tiny strainer, and a Pyrex measuring glass to use to help very slowly sift and press my way through the juice. Now you can also choose to let this cool and run your mixture through a juicer, and believe it or not, that will help work to get some of the extra goodness out. But this is kind of sort of the manual way to do it. And besides, I wanted to have some of my juice hot in the form of a tea this morning, so we may as well just go for it. Running it through a juicer is definitely a good, easy life hack, but you know what? This is sometimes called starting from the bottom, and this is the most cost-effective way to do this. You can also use a bigger strainer and a bigger pot as well, but you're going to want to be careful not to get this blended mixture anywhere outside of the container that you're getting it in, because oh, the level of defeatedness you will feel to have all of this wasted, I promise you. But once your mixture is all pressed and strained and ready to enjoy, you can go ahead and do whatever you'd like with this. This is also good to can and keep for a few months at a time, but mine never seems to last that long because I am so addicted to it. If you try this, let me know what you think in the comments below.